All right, welcome to Professional Leadership. In this video, I want to talk about the first of the four behaviors. So in the last video that we did, we looked at just kind of introducing the idea that the behavior you're modeling, right, is picked up by the individuals around you and then is spread through the organization, right? And so we talked about the difference between a foundational trait and a secondary trait. And so the four foundational traits that we're going to go through over the next few weeks are integrity, attitude, productivity, and then your spiritual foundation. Right? So this first one today is going to be integrity. So if I was to give you a definition of integrity, I would say there's the obvious moral implications, right, of honesty, trustworthiness, those types of things. So there's a moral component to integrity. And then there is also a kind of a strength component to integrity. So think about a ship, right, like even a submarine. As it goes underneath water, the submarine's integrity, the ship's integrity, is its strength, right? I think that's a very important aspect to remember about integrity, is that we're not just dealing with morality, which is a big part of it, but we're also dealing with your strength as a leader. So you take the example of the ship, the submarine. It goes underneath the water, and the hull's integrity, the integrity of the ship is its strength, its ability to go underwater. As you go underwater, the pressure increases on the ship, right? And the pressure is trying to crush the ship, right? And so the strength of its sides, of its hull, its integrity, is what keeps it from getting crushed by the pressure. That the deeper it goes, the higher the pressure, the greater the strength that the ship has to have in order to keep from being crushed by the pressure. And so I think that is an important definition of integrity, and it's your ability to maintain your shape even when pressure increases, right? So that as you go up in leadership, as you face new challenges, the pressure of those challenges will want to conform you into a different image, right? Will want to change you, will want to crack you and break you, those types of things. That's what pressure does. Your strength is what allows you to maintain your form under any pressure, right? So that is an important element. A lot of people, if they don't have internal strength, when the pressure gets high, they'll some people have emotional eruptions. So they get angry, they get mad at people. Some people get depressed. Some people, their reaction is not emotional at all. For some people, it's to cheat, right? Pressure gets high, and the organization begins to cook the books or something. Think Enron, think WorldCom, think Bernie Madoff. When pressure gets high, people begin to cheat, because they don't want to admit loss or something like that. Those are lack of integrity. The pressure got high, and their moral standing was not there. They didn't have internal strength, and so the situation crushed them, if you will, right? And so that's not to put all the blame on the situation, but it is to say that because they didn't have internal strength, they didn't have the ability to be correct and morally upright under any circumstance, right? And that's really what we're after as godly leaders. As godly leaders, we believe that the Lord is the one who is empowering us. We believe that the Lord is the one who is showing our organization's favor and grace. And so you have to ask yourself, as you're leading, right, can God trust you with responsibility, right? Will pressure and things like that cause you to change, right? Will it cause you to become prideful? Will it cause you to become greedy? Will it cause you to become demeaning towards others, right? There's a lot of things, negatives, that can come when our integrity is not there. So that's why if we're going to be a leader and we want God to bless our organization, we want God to bless our influence, we have to have integrity because we are representing the kingdom. And God, I guess a good way to look at it is if God was to invest in you or in your organization, right, would it reflect His values, right? Who wants to invest in something that doesn't reflect your values, right? That isn't something that you believe in, right? And so the same way, if we want God to invest His favor and His grace into our organizations and to help us to move forward and to grow in influence, then we have to ensure that we are running our organizations in a way that reflects kingdom values, right? We shouldn't expect for God to want to move forward a leadership or an organization that is not based upon His kingdom values, right? So there's a lot of organizations that succeed for a short time without integrity, right? But they don't have the favor of the Lord, right? They're here today, gone tomorrow. If we want the Lord's favor over our organizations, over our leadership, over our life, it begins with this one. And so hopefully as a godly leader, this is not coming as a shock to you, obviously, right? But I do want to deal with this one first. Even though it may seem obvious, it's important to have this. We have to drill this into our minds that we must run things with integrity. And so integrity, though, is not just, as we've talked about, not just your moral standings. It also has an element of strength, right? That as a leader, you may know the right thing to do and not have the strength to do it, right? Paul talks about that. You know, people who know the right thing to do but then don't find the strength to actually do it. And so I'm giving you a definition of integrity that is more than just knowing the right thing to do. Integrity is the strength to do it under any circumstance. And that's the real challenge, right? Sometimes, you know, we mentally say, well, yeah, we have to run our organizations in a good way. And we know that mentally, but that's the easy part of the battle, is to know it mentally. The harder part of exercising integrity is to do it under every circumstance, right? And so that's really what we want to look at. Think of it like a suit of armor. Wherever the weakest point is becomes your vulnerability, right? You're only as strong as the weakest spot in your armor. You had solid steel armor everywhere and then right in your chest just had cloth, then you become an easy target, right? Because you have an area that is not strong compared to everything else. And so this is where we really want to focus our attention. Do we have an area in our personal walk that is not as strong, not as protected, because we have let it become a weakness, right? For some people, they have a pride weakness, right? So you put them in a position of leadership and they become arrogant. Some people have a way of treating other people poorly when they get into positions of leadership. Some people become greedy, right? And so they start using company resources only for themselves. And so you have to be careful with that. Some people are lustful, right? You know, and they get into positions of leadership and they use that to form relationships with women or with other people that they shouldn't, right? And so, you know, and that happens all the time. That's happened, you know, with lots of high-profile leaders. They cheat on their wives or cheat on their husbands. And their entire platform of integrity is broken. It could have been really strong in a whole bunch of other areas, but it's the area of weakness, right, that brings the whole thing down. So it's not just about having strength in a few areas, right? Think of that submarine going underneath the water. If it's got one seam that wasn't made strongly, it doesn't matter how strong the rest of it is. That one seam will be where the ship implodes, right? And so so integrity is a wholeness of moral strength. It is not just having moral strength in some areas. It is identifying where you are most likely to have your weakness and praying, thinking differently about that area, trying to develop strength in that area, because that is your most likely place, right? Integrity is about not allowing something to bring a fall in, right? To bring collapse, to have moral failures of that nature. And so it's really about identifying an area of weakness, right? And doing your best to fix that. So that's part of integrity, right? Is we're talking about the moral side and the strength to do things morally right. And those types of areas of integrity are important for every form of leadership, right? But then there are some elements of integrity that are specific to the workplace environment, things like that. So one area of focus that I would like to draw is if people know that they can trust you, right, and that you are a person of integrity, it influences the power of your communication. Sometimes as communicators, we think that the power of our communication is in our word choice or our style or our delivery. But there is another element that is important to the power of your communication, and that's your integrity. If people don't believe you, or if they have identified personality flaws of a moral nature in your life, it affects your ability to speak into their life. They may obey what you're saying, but they will not be influenced by your demeanor as strongly if they feel that you don't have integrity. There is a natural kind of pushback when you feel like somebody is dishonest. If they give you a direct command, you will probably do it because you don't want to lose your job, but you are not opening yourself to be influenced by someone that you don't trust. And so there is an important element of integrity to the power of your communication. It's important for pastors and teachers as well to have integrity. Just think of a pastor. If he committed some kind of moral failing, probably just about everybody in the church would want to tune him out, even though everybody sins. But there is something to it when somebody realizes that someone has fallen, that they shut themselves off to wanting to take that person's advice. And so as it would be in a church, in varying degrees, you find this within organizations as well. So that if people trust you, there is an openness to receive your influence, right? So it's different than just pure obedience, because sometimes people will be obedient to your position, right, because they don't want to lose their job. But in terms of you being able to influence them, right, and to be able to spread culture, right, so that's what we're talking about, is modeling behavior so that this integrity spreads, right? If you don't have the foundation of integrity, all the other attitudes and the other elements of culture that we're trying to create, you're going to have a hard time spreading them yourself if you don't have integrity, because people will be closed off to your communication, right? They will hear you, but they won't be influenced by you in a direct way, right? Okay. An ethical leader, right, a morally sound leader, someone with integrity, has a platform not only to speak into other people's lives, but to demand integrity of other people, right? Think about it this way. If somebody has no integrity, then their demands for integrity for the people around them are weak. You know, if everybody knows that you're a liar and then you come out with a memo that says you expect everybody else to tell the truth, it's weak, right? It's not influential. But if you are known as an honest person, and people know that you stand on your word, and then you begin to send out memos through the organization that says that you expect and demand honesty from everyone in the company, that carries weight, right? And so your integrity gives you a platform to demand integrity from other people, right, within your organization. Okay. In my opinion, integrity, and the reason I gave this one first, it is the foundational value, right, for everything else. If you don't have this one, everything else falls because you have no ability to influence other people if you don't have integrity. If you yourself are weak in these areas, then your ability to influence people will be weak. And if you can't influence people, then you can't lead well, right? And so you can make correct decisions, you can run the numbers well, but you won't be able to influence, which is such a key part of leadership, if you don't have integrity, or at least not influence in a positive way, because there's negative influence, right? But in terms of influencing in a positive way, if you don't have it, you can't replicate it, right? You can't be something that you're not, right? Chickens lay eggs, and when the eggs hatch, none of them are cows, right? Because chickens can only reproduce other chickens. And it is the same in leadership, that if you don't have integrity, you can't reproduce it around you, right? So this is why to have a culture of integrity requires a leader at the top who has based their life and their leadership on a platform of integrity. It doesn't mean that they're perfect, right? You can be flawed and human, because we all are, and still have a strong platform of integrity that allows the rest of your leadership to be influential. Okay. Let me give you a couple other elements of integrity. A clear one is honesty, right? Do people trust you, right? And you have to ask the question, if people don't trust you, why would the Lord trust you with added influence, right? Because there's one thing to have the works of your own hands, right? The things that you're able to accomplish. It's another thing to have God's favor backing you and God pushing you into new levels that you could never have come to and that your organization couldn't have come to without His grace. There's a lot that God wants to pour into our Christian organizations, right? But what about trust, right? Can God trust you with great favor? Integrity, we talked about strength, that your integrity will be tested by the people around you, by circumstances around you, by the enemy. The enemy, went right after Adam's integrity, right, and tried to get him to sin. Went right after a weak spot. Tried to break his moral foundation, right? Okay. So integrity is a strength. It takes more strength to be strong. It takes strength to be strong. That's a new one. It takes strength to be strong in your morality, right? Because weakness, by definition, right, is lack of strength. And so you can do nothing and be weak. But it takes active engagement to be strong. That no one just is just strong because just they are. Only the Lord is inherently strong. For us, integrity is something that we have to go after. It's something we have to build within ourselves, because there is a natural tendency within us to not have integrity. And so we need to develop it. It is a strength that we develop. Sometimes people call good evil and evil good, and there are some corners of business that think that an honest person is a weak person, right? And so that's why I emphasize that this is a strength, because there are some industries and some business places where you will go where honesty is not considered a value, even though they would like people to be honest to them. Truth be told, they feel like they can't be honest and still make a lot of money, and so they would just as soon manipulate, lie, cheat, do whatever they have to do to win. And there is an element of that in the world. There's a strong element of that in the world. But I believe that we must see that as weakness, right? That any lack of integrity is weakness, and by being manipulative and cheating and lying, they have introduced a weakness into their business model, right? And so we don't want that. In our organizations, we want to push for strength and for integrity, because those are lasting values, right? Another element of integrity is your ability to align your business with your values, right? I think this is a key part of integrity. It's one thing if you have personal integrity, but have you created the business to reflect that, right? Does your business do honest policies? Do you have it reflected in your financial statements, in your marketing? Are you saying that you're a person of integrity, but your marketing is manipulative, right? Are you saying you're a person of integrity, but you way underpay your employees and overwork them, right? Are you saying that you're a person of integrity, but you don't require stringent safety demands to keep your people protected, right? It's one thing to feel like you are morally strong, right? It's another thing to take your morals and your integrity and interpret that into company values, right? Almost like you interpret from one language to another. You have to take the language of moral integrity and interpret that into what does that mean for business practice, right? It means that your marketing should be straightforward and not manipulative. It means that your pricing should be fair. And there should be a reason behind your pricing. It should be that you treat your employees fairly, that they should get not only a decent pay, not saying you have to overpay, but don't underpay. Don't expect them to work overtime and not be paid. Those are manipulative practices. And so you want to treat your people with respect. Do you give them a good work environment, right? Do you say that you're a man of God, but then yet the work environment that you've created is harsh, or you don't take care of them, you don't some people don't run the air conditioning. That's just a simple example, but one of maybe think like the Chinese sweatshops. I mean, we may not think of that stuff here in the United States, but that happens all over the world where people don't have good work conditions for their employees. And so they put them in unsafe conditions. They put them in work environments that are oppressive in many ways, right? That's an extreme example. But we can have lesser examples of oppressive environments even here in the United States. And so as a person of integrity, you have to think about what is the environment I've created for my people? What is the image I'm projecting of my products? Whenever I have meetings with people, am I honest in the meetings, right? Or am I using politics when everybody's honest and full of integrity until we get into the meeting, and then all of a sudden people are positioning and jockeying, that happens in a lot of places, that people have a different side when they feel like they have to get into a boardroom or they have to get into some kind of meeting, then they put their guards up and they start to manipulate, right? Whereas in other areas you can trust them, maybe you can't trust them there. It's about aligning your business practices with your values, right? That your business and the way you run your business has to reflect all the things that you say about your personal life that you say you have there. And so sometimes they don't always, it's why I use the word interpretation, because you can be honest in your personal life, and that just means that you don't tell a lie. But what does honesty in your business mean, right? And so you have to interpret that into your own business. Sometimes it has to do with your packaging, right? Maybe you say some things on your packaging that's not true just to get some people to buy your product, right? So anyway, so there are things to do. There's a fine line between marketing your product and the strengths of your product and lying about your product, right? And so you want to have aligned your business with the values that you profess, right? Does your company serve more than just the bottom line, right? Is your company about more than just making money? There's different elements to that, right? That even if you run your company with the purpose of it being about the bottom line, as a Christian, then you should be then tithing off of that company. And so the greater purpose is that you're wanting this large business because you know that a lot of that money is being funneled into the kingdom to help people with to run churches, to do whatever the ministry requires, that your business is not just about producing, even if it's only about producing money, it's not just about producing money only for you, it's also about funneling off your 10% into the kingdom so that you're being a contributor to the kingdom. And so what is the higher purpose of your organization? That every organization should have more to it than just producing money, that money is perhaps the end goal to a certain extent, but then you're going to funnel that money off for other uses, right, to help the kingdom. And then some organizations have other end goals other than just the money. Some of them have, take for example, like a Goodwill or a Red Cross or Salvation Army, something like that. They also have within their business structure things that they're doing to help the community, as part of their business operations, right? So you can do this from two ways, but your business needs to have a higher purpose, right, than just producing money. Either your higher purpose is something operationally like Goodwill that's helping and reaching out to people, or it's the purpose of taking the money and putting it into an organization that is doing something with higher purposes, right? So money is never an end in itself, right? You must run an organization to where it is profitable and that the money is accounted for and that the money is productive, that there is strong cash flow. You have to maintain your business that way, but the ultimate purpose of it is not for that to just stay only in cash, that you have a higher purpose. Either you are influencing in some way something for the kingdom through your business operations, or you are taking a certain percentage of your money and funneling it in to organizations like churches or something of that, particularly a tithe off of your money. I always teach that, that your business is part of your ministry, right? Or if you are in ministry, you must run it like a business and be effective in that. But if it is just a business, then that is the ministry that the Lord's given you, and that you are part of the financial side of the kingdom, and that part of your responsibility is to provide resources for the kingdom, right? So you got to have that. So whatever your leadership finds you, you have to align your organization with the values. If you have a church, then it becomes a little easier. The whole purpose of the church, if you're a pastor, is to reflect the values of the kingdom, right? But sometimes you find yourself in organizations that are not as straightforward as a church in terms of it being a kingdom activity. And so you have to interpret, what does it mean for my business to live godly and to reflect kingdom values? Okay. A couple other things to think about. That your integrity is not just reflected in who you are and how you structured your business, but also in how you interact with other people. So let me give you a few constituents, some people that you have to think about in terms of how you influence them and how your integrity rubs off on them. You've got your co-workers. We've talked about that. You're going to have interactions with investors a lot of times. If you're a church, you're going to have banks probably that give you loans for capital projects. If you're just a business owner, you're going to have people that are wanting to invest in your organization. So your interactions with investors should be honest and upfront. You're going to have relations with either church members or customers, people of that nature. You have to be not only caring and honest, but you want to have the fruit of the Spirit as you're interacting with these different people groups. You're going to have relations with the public, right? How do you portray yourself, your corporation, your organization to the public? And then one other one that is kind of a last thing is integrity in your financial statements, right? First of all, to keep financial statements, right? Any organization needs financial statements, so you want to keep those, and you want to have integrity and openness in your financial statements. For most organizations, that's not a problem, but there is always that tendency, whether it's a large company or a small company, there is at least the temptation or the opportunity to manipulate the financial books for a variety of reasons, right? To make yourself look like you're doing a better job than you are, right? To show profitability when maybe there wasn't. There's a lot of ways to do accounting, right? Accounting's not as cut and dry as people think sometimes. And so as an organizational leader, you always want to make sure that you are pushing the people who are handling the books to do everything straightforward, honest, clear-cut, so that you don't introduce shades of manipulation into your financial statements, okay? All right, so integrity is the foundation. It is the foundation for your personal life, for your communication, for your business and organizational practices, and for your relations with other people. Out of the foundation of integrity, then we can begin to layer on everything else. And keep in mind, integrity is more than just what you believe. It is what you do, right? That determines whether you are a person of integrity. Circumstances will test your ability to be strong, just like the submarine going underwater. The farther you go, the greater the pressure, the greater the integrity that is required to maintain your shape in that new environment. And it's the same with leadership. The higher you go, the greater the pressure, the more integrity is required for you to maintain your shape in those high-pressure situations. And so you have to ask yourself, if you have a vision of going higher, do you have the integrity to get there? Because the higher you go, the greater the pressure, the greater the internal strength will be required, right? So know that the Lord's not going to send you to a height that your integrity will not keep you, because then you will get crushed, right, by the pressure. And so if we're wanting the Lord to position us, then we have to pay attention to our integrity, because we don't want, or we won't be allowed by the Lord to enter into positions that our integrity is not strong enough to hold us. Okay?